Okay, good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Borough Plan Committee on the 28th of November. I won't go through the evacuation procedure because we have no members of the public, and I think everyone here knows fully well which door to aim for if there is an alarm, which there shouldn't be. The meeting isn't being live streamed as we have technical problems, but it is being recorded and will be available on the council's website and YouTube. Can I ask that you turn your mobile phones off or onto silent, please? Item 2 is apologies. I have 2 apologies. Councillor Baxter Payne, who's been substituted by Councillor Harbison. Thank you, Councillor Harbison. And Councillor Phillips. No others. No, that's him. Item 3 is minutes. Minutes of the last meeting held on the 12th of July, which we've all had. Is everyone happy I can sign those? Yep. Okay. Item 4, declarations of interest. Is there anything to declare that isn't listed on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. I've been appointed to represent Warwickshire County Council on the West Midlands Combined Authority Transport Board. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have that noted, yes. Thank you, Murray. Public consultation. We have no members of the public here tonight, so we can move on to the main items. So item 6 is first, Borough Plan Review and Update. So Sarah, is it going first?
Yep.
Yeah, over to you.
Perfect. The purpose of this report is to update members on the Borough Plan Review process, the outcomes of the Reg 19 consultation, minor amendments required to the infrastructure delivery schedule for the Borough Plan Review, and to recommend to Cabinet and full Council that the review can continue to the Regulation 22 submission stage, with the caveat that any amendments deemed necessary can be carried out by delegated powers of the Assistant Director in consultation with the portfolio holder. The agenda also refers to the local development scheme updates required for the projected submission, which will also need to go to Cabinet/Council. The Borough Plan has gone through various consultations from the call for sites and issues and options, both in 2021, the preferred options in 2022, and finally the publication document, which was consulted on in September and October this year. Members may recall that the draft of the publication document and supporting documents that were required to be submitted were presented to committee in July this year. The understanding was that the evidence-based work was still being completed at that point in time, and any amendments could be carried out under delegated powers, up to the document being published and going out to consultation. Subsequently, the publication document included such amendments. 2 of the documents presented to committee were the proposed infrastructure delivery plan and the infrastructure delivery schedule for the Borough Plan Review. These documents define what infrastructure is required to support the development in the review. The IDP and the IDS sets out ongoing and planned schemes for different infrastructure. They ultimately seek to inform the planning obligations that are likely required for new developments. The documents are based on information currently available and must be able to respond to the changing needs and circumstances over the plan period. Consequently, these are both live documents that will take account of changes as they come forward and will need to be updated annually once the Borough Plan Review is adopted. The Strategic Transport Assessment advised a number of schemes are required in order to mitigate future development. These include works at the A5 Woodford Lane and a roundabout at the Redgate. These were originally shown in the IDS for being required by 2039. However, these have been amended in line with the STA and are required prior to 2031. The IDS has therefore been amended The full document can be seen at Appendix B even. The Council's Recreation and Culture are currently reviewing their projects and delivery times, and this will be fed into the IDP and IDS, and it is therefore proposed that any amendments will be carried out under delegated powers and request for minor amendments.
The Local Development Scheme is another document that under the Planning Act 2004 needs to be up to date and will need to be correct when submitting to the Planning Inspector. The Council's LDS currently indicates that the publication version will be submitted to the Planning Inspector at the end of December 2023. As you may be aware, the Planning Policy Team have recently been involved in a planning hearing and are currently involved in 3 planning inquiries scheduled to take place between January and early March. These inquiries were unforeseen when preparing the previous LDS and have significant implications on resources, as at least one Principal Policy Officer is effectively working full-time to defend the Council's position on these schemes for the foreseeable future. In addition, there are other policy requirements outside of the Borough Plan Review which need to be completed, including the annual monitoring report, infrastructure funding statement, brownfield register and a sustainability report. All these documents have an impact on resources. Notably, the duty to cooperate and emergent amended memorandum of understanding are still ongoing, and some local authorities have confirmed that they will not be in a position to respond until after Christmas. Officers and members are still working with adjacent local authorities on this, with discussions and meetings likely to take place in December. Officers are also continuing to have discussions with the Planning Inspectorate and Planning Advisory Service to ensure that the final submission can proceed as smoothly as possible. All these matters have inevitably delayed the Borough Plan process. Officer time is still required to review the number of consultations received and to complete remaining documents that are necessary for the submission. It is therefore considered necessary that the paragraph 3.3 of the Local Development Scheme and timetable is amended as shown in your agenda. The full proposed amended document can be seen in Appendix C. The amended LDS proposes submission is by the end of January 2024. The Emerging Gypsy and Traveller Site Allocations Development Plan document is also mentioned within the LDS. This document will be discussed later. However, continued discussions with the Inspector and main modifications have delayed the expected receipt of the Inspector's report. The LDS therefore needs to be updated to show the true picture going forwards. Paragraph 4.71 of the agenda gives an amended update and timetable for the Gypsy and Traveller DPD.
Responses to the Borough Plan Review. The consultation ran for 6 weeks and was advertised through social media, press releases and emails. Paper copies of the Borough Plan Review and associated documents were available at various places and presentation boards were placed in the Town Hall. Officers were available to answer any questions. The public were also invited to email or telephone officers. 2 duty to cooperate forums were held via Microsoft Teams in September, one for neighbouring authorities, statutory bodies and interested parties. Approximately 45 people attended that forum. The second forum was held the next day and approximately 20 people attended. The Council received a total of 63 written responses to the public consultation. Paragraph 4.12 provides details of the parties that responded, which included organisations, statutory consultees, local authorities, agents, developers, residents' association, action groups, councillors and members of the public. The main comments are shown in paragraph 4.13 and relate to the lack of evidence of duty to cooperate, queries of how MBBC will meet the strategic employment and housing needs for the sub-region, and sites not allocated that could assist in meeting those needs. Appendix A provides a summary of the representations received to the Reg 19 consultation. Along with the addendum, you will note that there's been a late response from Natural England. The full responses will be available at the point of submission and will be submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. Further work is required in relation to the responses. The policy team will provide individual officer comments and consider whether there is a need for modifications to be recommended to the planning inspector, together with other pieces of work required for submission will need to be completed in the next 2 months. In conclusion, we ask that members note the responses to the publication document. Members are also recommended to request that the Borough Plan Review can go to Cabinet and Council in order that it can proceed to Regulation 22 stage submission, with the recommendation that any amendments can be carried out under delegated powers of the Assistant Director for Planning in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning and regulation. Having regard to the amount of officer time that is still required for the outstanding work for the Borough Plan Review and other necessary work, it is recommended that the LDS is amended with a view to submit to the Planning Inspector by the end of January 2024. The amendments to the LDS will go to Cabinet and Council for the new document to be adopted.
Okay, thank you both. And that was a very detailed presentation. I might add, actually, you referred to Natural England being late with their response. We've actually had one in which is in the addendum, which you should have received. Actually, a very good response from them, very positive, so that's good. So you've had the recommendations. I'm happy to move this from the chair, if I can have someone second. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. And open the floor up to any member. Councillor Condicle.
Thank you, Chair. A lovely little smile from you there. A lot of things to discuss about this, and it's really disappointing how few people took part. It looks like there were 9 members of the public, 1 local pressure group. Myself was the only councillor. I actually made 19, 18, 19, something like that, submissions. But very, very little from the public. And this is a 3.5-year, 4-year process from the new administration coming in and this getting adopted maybe 2024 December. 3.5 years, and most of the input to this is from developers. 36 inputs from developers and landowners, which will obviously try and get even more of our countryside built over. There's also the big question of infrastructure, which came in with the Labour's Borough Plan. We never got the infrastructure we needed for development under Labour, and there's lots of lists of infrastructure, but there's nothing to actually force them to happen. The one particularly relevant at the moment is sewage, and we have a big problem in Wellington now, and I'm sure you'll have in Bulkington and Bedworth as development goes on, where the network just hasn't been upgraded to cope with the extra houses. The extra houses have been tapped on to the existing surface water network and the existing sewage network. And for several years we've been getting surface water flooding, and this winter we've now got sewage coming out of manhole covers to add to the surface water as the network has been overstretched. And in the infrastructure report, page 21 I think it is, we have on here 2 items for the Wellington Church Lane improvements and the sewage treatment works. The Wellington improvements at Church Lane will never happen. The County Council and the Severn Trent are arguing over who's paying for them, and the current outcome is no one will do the work because only 26 houses are at risk of flooding, and it's only a bit of sewage. I say this is totally unacceptable. We need to get this infrastructure actually delivered. And for the last few years, we've had sewage going into the River Anchor in Wellington. The year before it was 70 hours. Last year it was 90 hours of sewage discharges. And we've still got the whole of Top Farm and all the other bits still to be built out. So we're really lacking infrastructure. And it's the same for everything else. The bus shelter hasn't even been built from the very first development in Wellington. People have to walk up to the Taylor Wimpey development or actually get off there to get their bus. It's totally crazy how little infrastructure we've got, considering the almost 1,000 houses we've been building some years. And so this plan will just put more stress. The other thing all these plans have, and there's a few comments in the feedback, is this 15% modal shift. And everyone says or a lot of people on the survey says, oh, we won't get any modal shift. But if you don't get modal shift, you have to plan for 100% of the traffic to be on the road rather than 85%. And we haven't had the road changes yet. And I think the officers were mentioning some of the stuff which has been put out to 2039 is being brought back to 2031, because we can't have a borough plan where you don't build the roads till the 15th year of a 15-year plan. That clearly is total lunacy. And yeah, I don't think we should move this plan forward. I think we need to fix some of these issues. We also have issues with the town centre. Yeah, the flood alleviation project has been cancelled, so our town centre will not be protected from what will be a very regular flooding incidents. I say it's just not where we need to be, and with all the things not being delivered, it was looking like a second grade 2-2 borough plan, and it might be another third rate borough plan if the developers can odge up the numbers even more. I say I'm most disappointed, and I won't be voting for it to be moved forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Usual points you make at every meeting. I actually think 3 years to deliver a borough plan review is pretty good. It took the last lot 10 years to do it. In terms of infrastructure, we've got it all in there. Our job is to put it in there. We can't do Severn Trent's job for them. We can't do County Council's job for them. And most of the things you've just mentioned are nothing at all to do with delivery of this council. They are nearly all from third parties. So I suggest you really write to them with your complaints and get them to move on it. Do officers have anything to come back on? No? Councillor Tromans.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers, first of all, for spelling out in detail the infrastructure delivery changes. Thank you for that. And also for giving us the amended timeline. I think that is much appreciated that was actually spelt out by the officers rather than just referring to this, because anyone who does watch this video, and I'm hoping there will be a few residents that will do that, at least it makes it very clear to them what that's about. Chair, I must echo your comments. So many times we hear, I love the phrase, we need to deliver that, with, as if it was in the gift of the council to provide better electricity infrastructure so that everyone could have high-speed charging on every new property that's built, as if we could put the cables in the ground or build the new sewage works or water treatment plants. We're the Borough Council. You know, we're not Severn Trent, we're not National Grid, you know, we're not the Highways Agency, and it's so misleading that keeps being referred to, and people should look at whoever is being misleading, meeting in, year out, and question actually, you know, if they're not causing more harm than good. As far as this plan being designed by developers, it's just, where does this come from? I mean, you know, developers would like a developer's charter. We have to, we've already heard tonight, defend against 3 appeals from people like Gladman's, who are, you know, have a reputation well deserved for being, you know, very predatory property speculators, and who have acted very unreasonably in pushing forward to try and engineer an appeal. And we have to, as a council, like so many other borough councils, defend borough plans, and that's what's being done. But this borough plan reduces the overall number of houses in the borough plan, and it does make much more sense in terms of infrastructure delivery and all the other things. So it's definitely not what the developers would like, but it is doing what is right for the borough in terms of delivering new homes and being fair and equitable and reasonable about the way it goes about that within the confines of the planning legislation that we have to work within. So I will support this. I'm supporting anything that moves it forward. I know there are some delays that have slowed the process slightly. That's happened a whole way along the line. They are beyond the council's control as far as I can see. And so I don't want to delay this further by trying to make spurious points and a bit of showboating. You know, we could all say, yes, let's put it on hold while we have a big examination and put lots of stuff out on social media about how we're fighting for infrastructure or whatever. Actually, rather than talk about it, we're doing it here. And that's the difference. We are doing something to move it forward and to improve things for people in the borough. So I will be supporting this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Chetterby.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to join Councillor Tromans in thanking the officers for all their hard work in doing this. It's a very thorough document. I'll start by sort of addressing some of Councillor Condacor's comments, if I may. In that, to an extent, I do share some of your concerns, Councillor. I really do, because they're not things to be overlooked. But we also have to, within that, accept what the Chair said and realise that a lot of this is not within our gift to sort out and to resolve. And therein perhaps lies the dilemma. But by just sort of turning around and saying that I'm not going to vote for this tonight, that's not really going to help or support this borough to move forward into the 21st century. So whether you like it or not, and yes, you know, nothing is ever going to be as perfect as we'd like it to be, because that's not how the real world works. What we have is still a very, very good, solid plan in place, and I think we need to get behind it and we need to support it, because the longer we delay, the more it's going to cost and the less we're going to end up having delivered. Because we know how these things work, that the longer we delay, it has a financial restrictive cost on us, and that money is going to get devalued. We're not going to end up getting all the things that we've been promised. And I think, you know, if we've got to take this fight, it's up to sort of like ward councillors like yourself, like myself and everyone else, to sort of speak to the statutory consultees, people like Severn Trent, and get them to actually do their job properly. I'm sure like council officers will do their bit in terms of trying to support that, but we cannot make them deliver this stuff. And I think that you have to have that realisation. I mean, we've listened to you in the past talking about cycle lanes and things like that and flooding, but those are not the only priorities that we have. We have to look at this holistically, and if we look at it holistically, what we have is still a very good and a very strong plan. Yes, there are things that need to be resolved. You know, but they're not necessarily things that MBBC can resolve, okay? And we need to go back to those statutory consultees and have those conversations with them. And I think as ward council, if you feel that strongly, that's what you need to do. I will certainly be sort of like writing to people like Severn Trent in the future regarding things like sewage and pumping capacity for Bulkington, for example. Okay, but I don't see that as being the domain of this body in trying to resolve those issues. So I will be supporting this tonight. One thing I would like to draw to the attention, I was just looking at the list, and I can't see, sorry, it's on page number 5, looking at the IDP project references. It's reference number 60 regarding HSG7 access. And it says, provision of new access from Lancing Road and the Nuneaton Road. Well, that's no longer the case, because it should be Bramcote Close, because the developers have said they don't wish to go through Lancing Road. They want to make it so that needs to be looked at and amended if at all possible, please. And obviously any section 106 money and SIL, which might have gone to Lancing Road, needs to come towards the other side of the village, which, assuming that's going to be the preferred development and access point, which is what they're indicating. So if that could just be made a note of, please, if you've got it. I can show you on mine if you're not sure where it is. I can bring it over and show you.
I think they've found it, and
Yeah,
I see
brilliant.
Sarah's made a note, so thank you for
Marvellous.
that. That will be followed up.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, I'm happy to leave it there and say I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gundico.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back on a couple of things. Firstly, I wasn't going to propose we delay the plan forever. What I was saying is we need to have a pause and correct a few of the things. And Councillor Chekovic has highlighted one. Some of the sewage stuff isn't in there or isn't going to happen. And I know we can't make sewage companies provide sewers, But what we can do, if they've got a phased plan for delivering sewers, is say, after you've developed the sewers, you can build the housing. It's this interconnection we need, which is where we've failed, because we've built housing, and then Severn Trent say, and the County Council, the Flood Authority, we won't do anything now. Whereas if you did it the other way round, the developer would be on the back of the Severn Trent to make sure that their infrastructure was in place. So it is interlock with the providers of infrastructure, both the county and Severn Trent, to provide stuff in good time. And actually, in terms of protecting the environment, it's that order that matters. We are hopefully going to get a new pumping station in Wellington. The point is, you do the pumping station and then you add to the network. You don't do it the other way round.
Actually, point of order, Chair, you know, the Speaker knows full well that is not possible and that's not how it works. I don't want the public to be misled anymore. That is not the purpose of these meetings, to give a platform for people who are willfully misleading the public. I'm sure you can point out, and the officers can confirm, that we cannot refuse planning on the basis of we haven't made Severn Trent come along and put sewers in place on the option that a developer will then might like to come along and build on it. We can't compel them to do that. That's not how planning law works. The Speaker's well aware of that. I think we should draw it to a close, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. You did take the words out of my mouth, actually. I was thinking exactly the same thing. I was going to let Councillor Condicor have his 5 minutes and say his piece, but yes, I totally agree with.
Right, I'll carry on then. Just a couple of the things. Yeah, we do need to actually get all the ducks in the row on this stuff. And I say there's enough things wrong that I think taking a month or two out to fix some of them will give us a better plan. And in the documentation, it says December 2024 is when we expect this plan to be adopted. That's 3 years and 7 months. One final question maybe for the officers. As I was the only councillor that responded to this consultation, will other councillors be able to take part in the inquiry or not? Thank you.
I'm not sure on that, but I think they can apply to take part, whether they've put in a submission or not.
Yeah, normally it would be because there's a submission and they say, yes, we want to attend, but it's really, I would imagine it would be down to the planning inspector's own opinion whether or not he wants that. I couldn't see there being any issue with most inspectors would normally not refuse.
Yeah, no, that would be my view. It is totally down to the inspector. I mean, on one hand, you're complaining that we've taken 3 years and 7 months to get a borough plan review done. On the other hand, you're wanting to delay it to fix things that aren't in our control. So I don't quite get your argument. You've said your piece, you have made your submission, I think it was about 19 points, and it's now, once we've submitted, be down to the inspector to discuss that with you and either dismiss them or take them into account. So I'm pretty comfortable we've got a solid borough plan, to be honest. And I must say, the work these officers have put in is over and above what's expected of them. I've had emails coming through to me, evenings, weekends. They really have put a sterling effort into what was a very challenging timescale. So, you know, I can't praise them enough for the work they've done. Councillor Harbison.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, without sounding like a parrot, I always like to thank the officers for their hard work, because I don't think people appreciate just how hard all of the officers involved with this authority work. The word tireless comes to mind sometimes, and how can I put it? I don't think the appreciation is always shown. We try to, but I don't think you always feel very loved. But believe me when I say that we do appreciate the work that you do. I'll be supporting this plan because there are areas within my own ward that have been neglected for years, that have caused problems, serious issues. Wembrook, the arches, the development up on Chilvers Rise, sorely needed, and the death, as we call it, the death roundabout up at the top. It all needed looking at for a long time, and it's now actually being addressed for the first time in a good while. I do understand the conceptual concerns that Councillor Clondacore has got. Of course, there are issues that need to be addressed. However, just again, to make it clear, just to the public, there are things that are outside of our control that we do need to defer to other authorities. Things won't just be rushed through with no thought about it. Those days are gone. So I will be supporting this, and I do think that we can all work together to make sure that this works well. And I am very chuffed the fact that it's only taken less than 4 years to do, because from looking in the way things have been done previously, when things have taken nearly a decade and have almost been forgotten, put on the back burner, again, sterling work by everyone concerned. These things take time. You can't just, it's not a computer game where you can just reload it if it doesn't work right. You have to get these things correct, or else people's actual lives are adversely affected. So therefore, I will be supporting this. But again, just to make, there are concerns, but we can deal with those from a calm perspective, and I don't think there's any point in getting on the third authority's backs, because I don't think it makes them go any faster. I think if we play the good person and just try and work with these people, I think we can get stuff done. So, as I say, thank you, Chair. That's just my 2 pence.
Okay, thank you for that. So if there's no other input, we can move that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? We'll record your vote, Councillor Clondacore. Thank you. Moving on then. Item 7 is an update on the Gypsy and Traveller Site Allocations Development Plan document. So over to Jackie.
It is. Thank you, Chair. This is just, as I say, updates on the Gypsy and Traveller DPD. This agenda seeks to provide an update to members on the status of the DPD and to provide details of the responses received to the main modifications. Purpose of this DPD is to allocate sites to meet the borough's identified need for Gypsy and Traveller pitches and showpersons plots. Publication version of the DPD was consulted on January to March 2022, and the responses received were considered prior to the submission for examination to the Planning Inspectorate in June 2022. This included suggested modifications. The hearing was held with the Planning Inspector on the 27th of October 2022. As part of the examination process, modifications were agreed with the Planning Inspectorate. The modifications were brought to Borough Plan Committee on the 12th of July. As part of the legislation, these have to be consulted upon, and the consultation ran alongside the consultation for the Borough Plan Review publication. There were 7 responses to the main modifications, all which were viewed as positive and were not perceived to be an issue for the DPD to progress. 1 was for a member of the public, and the remaining ones were specific statutory consultees. A précis of the responses are shown in paragraph 4.2 of the agenda on that second item. The responses have been sent to the Planning Inspectorate and a report is awaited. If he deems the DPD is sound, then this can then be taken to Cabinet and full Council in order that the document can be formally adopted, which officers anticipate will be February next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The recommendations are that we just note this. So has any member got comments to make on it? Councillor Clondacore.
It's really good that we're putting this to bed because it has been going on a very long time, and we've had lots of issues over planning which this should hopefully sort out. And it's not a case of always criticising the officers. We just don't have enough officers in planning policy. And yeah, I don't want to say much more, but I say this is really useful to have this done. And I don't know how long it will then last before falling apart with some government changes or whatever. But at least we've got something to defend our, particularly green belts out Bulkington way, from inappropriate development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And even though it doesn't carry full weight yet, it was very useful in a hearing that we actually won. And it did feed into that we were doing something about the situation. So yes, it is very good. And worth noting, the delays in this, you'll see there's a very long delay in it. And not our doing, they're down to the inspectorate, basically. You know, we got the job done in plenty of time. It did serve us well in that appeal. However, the inspectorate dragged it out a little bit. So hopefully it'll all soon be in force. So is everybody happy that we just note that? Yes? Okay, that'll be noted. Any other items? I don't have any. So happy to close the meeting. Thank you all for attending. Oh, Councillor Condicle.
I was just going to ask when we get an update of, because obviously it now goes and gets sent off to inspectors or whatever, will we get a note or will we have another meeting just to sort of give us progress?
At the moment, this will go off in January at some point. I guess officers might be able to help me. We'll probably have a couple of months delay before we get some feedback off the inspector, yes? Maybe Jackie, you can give us a sort of idea of what the process might be.
Yeah, it'll probably take a couple of months. It'll take a few weeks for it to be referred to an actual planning inspector, and then it'll probably take a couple of months from that for him to go through things. There'll be what we call matters, issues and questions that we'll have to fill in as they start to go through the processes, and then we'll have to have a look, and then we'll be discussing things from there on, and then hopefully we'll get a date for the inquiry, but it won't be quick. There'll be a couple of months in between time whilst they're making sure everything has been answered before the actual inquiry. In terms of the borough plan, coming back to borough plan, we can bring the modifications that we're suggesting. I think that was probably our next thought of where we were going from here. So that will be whatever meeting will be February, March time, I would have thought, probably.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think once we've got something to discuss from the inspector, that would be a good time to reconvene, have a look at that, and let our feelings be known. So with that, thank you very much for attending, and have a safe journey home. Stop the recording.